Aerospike is what you would call a developer first company. We consider developers first. We want to make sure that our product is available for those developers, that we have the right tools and resources. More importantly, I want to make sure that they understand that we're here to help them. We're here to guide them along the way, that as they use our technology, they can find that it's easier to use than they may have thought before.
Welcome everyone to another episode of GameLogic Behind the Games. Really happy to be able to welcome on Stacey Kruczek to the pod today. How are you, Stacey?
I'm awesome. Thanks. How are you, Mike?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well. Full disclosure, Stacey and I met last year at GDC, probably 2 or 3 nights in a row in different bars around the wonderful area of San Francisco.
Right.
And she's very kindly offered to come on and speak to us today. Stacey, you in the Chicago area? Is that correct?
Yep, just north of Chicago. Just slightly over the border.
Okay.
In Cheddarland, Wisconsin. So if you're familiar with the U.S., I'm pretty close to Chicago, yeah.
Well, I always start with the most important question, and it's the question everyone will be on the edge of their seat about is, what's the weather like over there?
Actually, it's sunny, but cold. But I'm okay with that.
You're okay
I'm all right.
with that? Okay, it's getting
There's
warmer.
not a lot of snow, so I'm all right with that.
Ditto over here in London. So Stacey, part of the reason why we launched this pod is I'm really keen to speak to people within the industry, from on the periphery of the industry, that have different roles and have different journeys. And I think it's fascinating to hear how people have got into the positions that they're in currently. And I think you've got a particularly unique story and a particularly unique journey. And I'm wondering if you don't mind, tell us about that journey and how you've got to where you are now.
Well, it is an interesting story, and where I've landed and where I kind of have found my space and my people, if you will. I started in kind of the marketing and communication space years ago, but I had always been sort of immersed in technology, working with ERPs and things like that. But I started in a developer relations team about 9 years ago, and a company called Zebra Technologies. And I started out as their marketing person in the developer relations team. So if you know about developer relations, it was still a little bit newer to a lot of companies, but Zebra had been doing it for quite a while. But they had this small team of about 4 or 5 engineers and then a DevRel leader and myself. So I used to like to say that I was a lone marketeer in the sea of engineers, because I literally sat on a floor of all engineers. And it was a very new space for me, even though I had worked with them in my prior positions and with IT and such. And I'd done a little bit of web development. So I had a little bit of a knowledge going into it, but not really knowing what I was getting into. Started sort of more as a technical writer and editor for the developers to help the engineers, massage their words, if you will, to make it a little bit more user-friendly for everyone, because it's highly, as you know, engineers are very highly technical. So, a great amount of respect was built among me and the team members, the engineers. I loved working with the engineers. I just kind of got them, if that makes sense. So from a marketing perspective, it became developer marketing. And I built the first developer marketing toolbox for Zebra, and really kind of something that I took on the road to share with other DevRel people in DevRel space. But today, I'm in the best space ever, is that I'm at Aerospike Technology. And Aerospike has been really an eye-opening, cool experience for me in the database world. And again, I'm working with the CTO and co-founder of the company. So that has been amazing in terms of what I've learned from him. And then also my team of developers, developer advocates who are incredibly brilliant. And I learn from them every day, and I have the best time. So really a great team that I'm working with. And I really love the DevRel space. That's definitely my space.
It's clear how much you enjoy your role, which is amazing. And I think, before I ask you a little bit more about Aerospike, I think one thing that I wanted to discuss, if you don't mind, and I think there's no getting away from the majority of engineers in any industry are male, right? There's a much larger proportion of male engineers than female. And I'm wondering how it was for you coming into that environment with a slightly different role as well, from a marketing background, working in a predominantly male industry, trying to assist with their role. How was that, and how did you find it? And were there any challenges?
I love that you asked this question because it really is a passion of mine working with women in code, women in technology, women in tech, if you will. Um, I've kind of immersed myself into some of those groups and learning from them. With the pandemic, a lot of that went online. So thankfully, I was able to learn from people all over the globe without having to travel there, and really try to find my space. I will say that when I was in my former position, there was one female engineer that I actually sat next to. She was awesome, and still talk to her today. And then she really kind of taught me a lot of different things. And it is very tricky for a female in a predominantly male world, in all honesty. But it wasn't something that was not new to me. I had been in insurance in years prior and in sales, and I was working in those type of environments before. So for me, I just, I guess I'm a very outgoing person, which helps. And I'm also very forthright in terms of telling people how I feel and stuff. So it's been a challenge, but I will say that I am always up for challenges. I am not one to shy away from them. And I was the first person to, raise their hand and say, I'd speak at any event that you'd want me to speak at, because I want to share sort of my learnings and my stories with everyone. So I think in the DevRel world, I'm finding a lot of female industry leaders that actually have been very inspiring to me. And I have a couple in particular that I've worked with, one who wrote a book about developer relations, and she's really become my mentor and friend through the years. She had worked with us on creating a DevRel strategy initially, and I still work with her today and still look to her for her guidance, but more or less, it's become a wonderful space for me to kind of feel like I have a place and that I own this, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
I
And
love that.
so I'm certainly not one to shy away from. I'll walk right into the room
I love
with all the
that.
football players.
Well, it's a topic that's quite close to my heart, if I'm honest. I've got two little girls, and
Hmm.
I take my little girls to football and to rugby and whatever these things might be. And I guess what I love, and what I hope continues to evolve, is that the world is changing, right? And we always used to be challenged with D&I hiring initiatives with studios, and there's never a silver bullet. But I think what I really take positive from, I think that, and the way that I think things will really, really change, it's going to be evolution, not revolution. And I think what we're seeing now is that actually, at a much earlier stage, and even if I talk about my little girls at kind of 9 and 7, there isn't any stigma attached now to playing football after
No.
school, or
Mm-mm.
or boys going to her dance classes, or whatever that might be. And I think that's only going to help integrate. And I think as time goes on, as we evolve, as the industry moves on as well, honestly think, Stacey, in 10 years, it's not even going to be an issue. I hope it's not, and I don't think I would even be asking you that question in 10 years, because I'd hope that
No.
that proportion is far more of an even split.
Well, the only recommendation I can give you is that I had an amazing father who worked in the manufacturing industry, and
Okay.
used to work at his plant in the summers, and he introduced me to the world of computers way back when.
Mm.
And I actually dragged a compact, this is going
Yeah.
to date me now, computer to my college campus. And even though I was doing more design and stuff with the Macs, I learned how to program on that compact computer because of him. And he always gave me the advice to make sure that I made my own way in the world and that I always had my own career and my own income, and that I just didn't give up. So he instilled a lot of that into me. So I was really thankful for that, and it's really set me in a good position for later on in life. A lot of lessons learned from my father I still refer to today.
And you refer to some of the strong female leaders that you worked with in the past, and I think I think it would be remiss of me not to mention that I think there's probably plenty of female developers out there that see you in the same light, Stacey. I think what you do and how you hold yourself is also very, very inspirational. So thank you for all you're doing. Really appreciate
Thanks.
that. Would love to move on now and talk more about Aerospike. Because obviously we're talking about the games industry, and we're talking to a lot of people that work for game studios. Aerospike isn't a game studio, but actually what you do is pretty cool, and you work with some pretty cool clients. So tell me more about Aerospike. Tell me more about your role within Aerospike, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'll hopefully do my spikers proud here. It's Aerospike is a real-time NoSQL and multi-model database platform. That's kind of our bread and butter in terms of our core product. But we also have a graph database, a soon-to-be vector database, and working a lot in the AI space as well. I've been working with Aerospike for over 12 months now. It's been really kind of an eye-opening learning experience, if you will. I'm just started to feel comfortable in my own skin, so to speak, with the technology where I feel like I can really speak to it. But what I have learned along the way is that there's really no product out there like that. I mean, you might hear about some of our competitors in the market space, and but the ability for this unlimited scale, the fact that it's so fast is just incredible technology. And I think that really speaks to the amount of really, as I like to say, smart people at Aerospike that I'm surrounded by every day. And I've been thoroughly impressed with like the engineering and developer teams and product and such, because they're really brilliant people, and we really all want to make a difference with what we're doing. And I feel like that's what we're doing. So you can't really trade that off for anything in the world. And I think with Aerospike coming in here, building this dev relations strategy, if you will, I was blessed to have this amazing team. And the gentleman and I that I work with, Tim and Art and Piyush, they all have their own specialties, if you will. So we really complement each other and literally can finish each other's sentences by now. But we all see kind of that vision and that strategy for developer relations as being a core part of the company, because Aerospike is what you would call a developer first company. Mm-hmm. We consider developers first. We want to make sure that our product is available for those developers, that we have the right tools and resources. More importantly, I want to make sure that they understand that we're here to help them. We're here to guide them along the way, that as they use our technology, they can find that it's easier to use than they may have thought before, and that we're providing them solutions to their problems. I mean, that's really at the core of development, if you will. Mm-hmm. And no matter if you're in the game development space, or you're in the fintech space, or ad tech space, all of that would apply. Mm. And I've been really fortunate to be with this team for us to build this strategy. And we're starting to really make headway. We're building a community. We're talking to developers one-on-one, which is what I love. And so everybody takes their own specialty in space, and they talk to the developers from where they're at, because there's so many languages and so many specialties that are associated with database development too.
I think it's a fascinating space, and I think if you look at the evolution of gaming over the last 10, 15, 20 years, and introduction of live services and everything being online nowadays, I think, I've kind of first really started to even really kind of consider and recognize that actually data and analytics was quite or a growing importance to studios, right, and to games. And actually that is more and more evident with every acquisition, with every collaboration, Epic and Disney, to be able to have these data insights and not have any limit on scale, as you've mentioned, Aerospike are able to support as well. I mean, from what I can see, I think that need and requirement is only going to become more prevalent, right?
Absolutely. And you can see it in the gaming space. I see it a lot. Like, I just think of it too financially as I plan for retirement and such. I'm looking at it, and some of the people that we're dealing with in terms of the amount of financial transactions that, like, let's say a company like a JP Morgan would have or something like that. The amount of data that it's ingesting and that it's working with is just unbelievable, right? Because it's everywhere globally. And I think that Aerospike has sort of that advantage. There's a low latency associated with it. Um, and I think what I want people to take away from this is that my role is really in the relationship building. And I'm here to help the developers, you know, be the evaluators that they need to be. Because even in the game development world, you're finding game developers are evaluating, right?
Yeah.
They're influencing whether or not they're going to, work with that particular company when they're developing.
Yeah.
And that's where I want developers to feel comfortable in our space, is that they feel comfortable with Aerospike. They know that we're here to support them, and we're going to help them along the way in their journey. And as they're evaluating this and they have questions, or they run into kind of challenges, which everybody does, because sometimes it's new technology,
Yeah.
right? There's sometimes the developers are handicapped by some of the emerging technologies that are out there. And certainly with the emergence of AI, it's moving, our industry is moving so fast. Technology is moving so quickly that it's hard to keep up with it.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing that maybe people like myself that aren't right at the forefront of this tech don't really consider the importance of is security, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
you kind of hear headlines and media will publish kind of big stories about data breaches and things like that. But actually, if you think of all these transactions and all these different data points, especially as things grow and more people are online, then the need to have robust security measures is absolutely vital. And again, studios are going to have to be investing in these products, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I think, to your point too, of the analytic piece too, to be able to analyze all of that data and see whether or not there's any security issues, really, realistically, if you're going to talk about it that way. I think that we live in a world where, as a developers, I guess, and sometimes I can consider myself that one too, as that we can be skeptic and not necessarily trusting of things. And so we want to make sure that we have the right tools and resources in place, but also I do look at security as an important piece for me too, personally, when I'm online and things like that. So hesitant. I have been breached. So I know what it feels like to kind of, have your own personal data out there too. So that's certainly a concern for a lot of people in the world.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And what I would normally do at this stage, Stacey, because like I alluded to earlier, most people I speak to are kind of working directly for gaming studios. And we would talk a little bit about kind of 2024 and what we think that looks for the gaming industry. But actually, I'd like to take a different angle with you and actually ask, for 2024 and beyond, how does that data and analytics and security angle within gaming look like for you? And is that do you see a significant increase in spend in these areas? Do you think it's something that these studios are really going to have to try and get a grip on this year? Is it going to take a massive breach somewhere for that to become important to people? What do you think? What are you seeing? What are the trends? What's going to happen?
Well, I certainly hope not with the breaches.
Yeah.
That's sort of a nightmare for everybody, right? I would certainly not wish that on anyone. I think as we think of the game development world and stuff, that you look at the monetization with it, right? You've got like in-app purchases on a lot of these gaming apps and stuff. You're on your phone, you're playing with some type of gaming app, maybe even some type of gambling app, if you will, because you're playing with the dollars. There's so much security that has to go in there, right? That has to be in place for that. that I think that we're moving into a world where it's going to become even more prevalent, more important, for developers to think of too.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
as they're building these solutions, as they're evaluating, they want to make sure that they're secure as well, right? They don't want any breach of their own development, of their own repos, if you will, that they're building, that they're not sharing publicly, or maybe they are, but they don't want someone to take that code, right, and
Yeah.
go off for themselves and do their own development. My daughter's boyfriend actually has been in kind of this space, and he created a game app, if you will. And I saw him kind of go through the trials and tribulations of people kind of taking his code and stuff like that, not understanding. So the younger that some of he was a college student when this happened, as a senior, and came to me to say, how do I trademark this? How do I work with this? And I think looking for advisement for some people too, to help you along the way as a young game developer too, is really important. So make sure that you're doing your homework on it
Yeah.
as well.
I think that's really great advice, and again, often, especially with, unfortunately, layoffs have been quite topical in the gaming industry recently, and quite often discussed with guests about tips about getting into the industry. But you've kind of answered a bit of a question there, and actually, I think it's a really good bit of advice that maybe game developers, either in the industry or looking for work right now,
Mm-hmm.
that's maybe another string to their bow that they can add that they potentially haven't thought about before, is kind of getting up to speed with how actually their code can be secure, and being really in the know about data security, analytics, and insight, because I am sure that many devs in the industry have neglected some of that before, right?
Yeah, and they may not know what's happening on the back end of it too. I
Yeah.
remember when we were at GDC last year, you saw the game that one of our team members built, the Meteor Spike, and it was great because it was like kind of that old time game. I can't even remember, Space Invaders, if you will, which I used to play. All right, I like Space Invaders. I like Pac-Man still. I still stick the USB in to play the old ones. But you could see what we did at that booth was to kind of show you the back end of the data and what was happening if we, if we pulled something, what would happen with that data? Would everything crash? And Aerospike, it doesn't, which is cool. But it was amazing to me to watch the game developers come by, and maybe they have not thought about that back end. What's happening with the data?
Yeah.
How's that churning, if you will? And there was a lot of eye-opening aha moments at GDC last year when I saw
Interesting.
that. So
Yeah, I bet.
for me, I had just come into the position, and so I was still learning, and I was learning along with those game devs, and I thought it was really, really cool to see.
Yeah.
So thinking about that picture, what's happening behind the scenes, not necessarily what you're playing and what you're developing. Think about the data behind it.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And even if one person listening takes one bit of nugget of golden information, then I think I've done a pretty good job here. So I really, really appreciate that, Stacey.
Yeah.
Last question. You've already alluded
Sure.
to Pac-Man and the retro games that you might enjoy. Is there anything? I don't know how much time you get to game nowadays, Stacey, but is there anything coming up this year that you're looking forward to playing?
I just play all the old games. I'm not really good at some of the new games. And I'm also, believe it or not, my son's a developer, and
Okay.
he's definitely a gamer.
Yeah.
And he's like actually an SRE now, but
Yeah.
my family plays a lot of it. So to me, it gets a little frustrating because my mind is somewhere else when I'm sitting here playing Pac-Man. I'm already thinking about the next thing that I'm doing at work. But and I like a lot of board games too.
Oh, cool.
So
Yeah.
I think there's a nice balance between them because there's a lot of things that can happen in conversation with others. No, I just really kind of go for the old time games. I love it when my brother sticks in the USB stick and we just all play Pac-Man or Space Invaders. Because to me, that was like, yeah, I like the basics. Maybe a little Mario. I can deal with a little Mario.
Love it. My little girl's like Mario at the moment.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Stacey, you've been absolutely wonderful guest, as I knew you would be. Thank you so much for coming on today. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. And I appreciate it. And game on. That's all I can say.
Take care.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.